Yon, kamusta bro? Good to see you
Yun!
again.
Episode 3. Wow!
Yun,
Exciting,
mabilis.
exciting.
Nagkabigote na tayo agad
Oo nga,
Episode
umaba na eh. So,
1 week pa lang tumanda tayo sa
mm,
mga politika natin. Kamusta dyan bro?
okay
How was your
naman.
weekend?
Medyo magulo pero okay naman. So maganda naman yung feedback dun sa unang 2 episode natin. So dami, natuwa din naman sila. Merong naasar pero konti lang. Hindi naman ganun kadami pa.
Okay, may mga naasar. At saka by the way bro, pasensya na. Last time kasi sobrang sleepy ako. Alam ko madaldal ako but I think overdrive ako nung first
Hindi
episode
naman.
mo.
Sakto
So
lang, sakto
pasensya
lang.
na. At saka
Mm.
guys, minsan may konting lag. So siguro hindi ganun ka-spontaneous, instantaneous yung reaction. Kaya pasensya na if parang na-cut ko si Mark. But nag-sorry na ako kay Mark. So ang gagawin natin now is of course more interactive at ano pag-usapan natin today, Mark?
Ayun, kung last week wala tayong masyadong nagalit, this week mukhang dadami yung magagalit sa atin, okay?
We're asking for it na.
Asking for it na.
We're
Ang
asking for it
topic
na.
natin ngayong episode na to is about the Marcoses. Yun. So
Yon!
deep dive
Marcoses.
sa mga Marcoses.
Amin nga Ilocano dyan. Yan,
And
pag-usapan natin yan mga kapsat.
yung current state ng politics ng mga Marcoses and their loyalistas. Pag-usapan natin yan in-depth and try nating i-cover as much as we can. Okay?
And with the Dutertes, no? Ano yung magiging
Yun.
dynamic
And
nila?
of course, their relationship with the Dutertes and all that.
Kasi Mark, ang tingin ko talaga, the true dark horse in this race is BBM, no? Kasi should Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. join itong elections as a presidential candidate or even as a vice presidential candidate, ang laki na maging impact ito dun sa dynamics of the race, no? So, yes, actually soon pag-usapan din natin si Mayor Isko, no? But I think BBM is a very, very big factor in these elections and I think everyone is watching anong sasabihin ni BBM mismo, although we have been hearing a lot from Aimee. But before tayo pupunta sa latest elections or upcoming elections at ano yung magiging impact ni BBM, ano maging decision niya, pag-usapan natin ang mga Marcoses, no? Okay. Because they have been an obsession both internationally and domestically, no? Kung pupunta kang abroad, sabihin mo lang Imelda Marcos, kilala siya. In fact, I think sa dictionary may term na Imeldific na, no? Yung sobrang magara,
grandiosa
or grandiosa, no? And I think Imelda herself kind of coined that term and she proudly says that Imeldific, no? At recently napanood ko yung Kingmaker, no, na documentary, very, very interesting. So central figure talaga mga Marcoses sa Philippine politics since ever, no?
Ever, o ramdam hanggang ngayon, di ba? Ramdam na ramdam hanggang ngayon.
So
30
that's
years.
why, Mark, gusto ko tanungin muna kita, no? Kasi ikaw lalo na sa YouTuber ka at saka influencer ka. Alam natin, I would say, mas malakas pa siguro Marcoses online than offline. Or siguro, yung supporters nila are not as vocal offline than online, no? Although sa amin sa Baguio, very, very vocal ang mga pro-Marcoses, no? But generally, napansin ko dito sa Manila, medyo mas tempered, no? So Mark, ano ba ang how strong are the Marcoses? We know they're strong, but how strong are they at least dyan sa online and YouTube? At bakit sa tingin mo, napakalakas ang dating ng Marcos at parang magaan ng feeling ng mga tao pag sinabi panahon ni Marcos, ganito, mostly positive ang marinig mo sa mga tao?
Sa tanong mo kung how strong are the Marcoses sa social media ngayon, very strong. Yun ang masasabi ko. In fact, I would even dare say na they are stronger than the Dutertes pagdating sa social media. I can say that in my 2 years na YouTube about politics, I would dare say na mas malakas ang mga Marcos loyalists kaysa sa mga diehard Duterte. Mukha lang silang magkasama, isang grupo. They are called DDS lahat. Pero when you break them down, mas marami yung mga loyalista kaysa doon sa, you would say, na talagang diehard for Duterte. So there has been a very major shift in the last 5 years. Talagang ibang-iba doon sa kinalakihan natin. Okay? Kasi growing up, of course, Aquino were always celebrated and a hero, si Ninoy, and hanggang maging pangulo si Pinoy, di ba? So lahat yan for the longest time. Tapos nung biglang for the last 5 years, biglang parang nabaliktad. 'Di ba yung mga yellows na ang madumi, yung mga yellows na ang talagang corrupt at hindi maaasahan, at yung mga Marcos na yung mabango. And a lot of that, dalawang factor for me, yung major factor dyan sa online of course, yung kanilang association with the Dutertes and yung magaling nila na social media operations. Na
Silang original, hindi ba, Mark, to be honest? I mean, I think way before the Dutertes and the DDS became a big factor online, I think the Marcoses have been there, no? I mean, for a very long time. So I think unsurprising yung sinasabi mo na talaga mas malakas sa Marcoses kasi sila yung classic, kumbaga, no? In a way, the DDS are more new phenomenon on a national scale. Of
Pero
course,
ang nangyari, nung na-injectan sila ng DDS, yung Marcos social media na ginagawa nila went on hyperdrive. Talagang sumipa ng todo gusto kasi nasabi mo nga kasi yung rise of Duterte is coincides with the rise of populism and yung strongman na image. And sino pa ba who else can 'di ba portray that image sa Philippine setting than Ferdinand Marcos, 'di ba? So I
siya
think
yung archetype, no? Siya yung pinaka-archetype ng strong leader or strongman leader. At wag natin kalimutan, Pangulong Duterte mismo, no, on many occasions praised the former President Marcos as one of his favorites, as one of the best presidents ever. Although may caveat siya na kung sana hindi lang siya naging dictator, but let's not go into that for now. Pag-usapan pa natin yan. So, Mark, I remember in the past you said something like, doon sa mga 16 million na bumoto kay Duterte, the large portion of that are Marcoses. And of course, that's somehow up for grabs for the next elections, if ever. This alliance, I don't know, sa tingin mo ba, is this an alliance of convenience? Is it as an alliance of increasing inconvenience? Ano ba nangyari? Or is this a natural alliance that will last for long? And yun nga, Mark, I still want to ask, bakit sa tingin na marami, maybe also for you, bakit ang ganda ng pangalan, bakit ang bango ng pangalan ng Marcoses? Kasi you go abroad, Marcoses are equated to one of the most corrupt dynasties. They're kind of like exactly like Guinness record, mga ganun na siniside. But dito sa Pilipinas, online, it's a very different impression. Baka ikaw, you have also something to say in terms of your personal impression with the Marcoses. And non-partisan tayo, so we're just being honest about impressions lang. No? Yeah.
So sasagutin ko din yung huling question mo na kung bakit bumango bigla yung pangalan ng mga Marcoses. I think one of the brilliance nung ginawa ng strategy nila Duterte is to destroy the old guard. Yung mga establishments, yung mga old na like the church, ABS-CBN, yung ibang mainstream media, I mean the whole mainstream media for that
establishment.
matter. The establishment. Yun ang dinurog ni Duterte, and lahat nung lahat ng mga safeguards doon na about warning about the Marcoses, nabuwag lahat. And suddenly, yung mga tao na parang medyo gusto naman si Marcos, biglang they can come out of hiding na I don't have to be ashamed na I like the Marcoses, kasi for the longest time they have been shamed, 'di ba? Lalo na nga like you said, yung mga Ilocano, of course, syempre is a hometown hero for Ilocanos. So ngayon parang wala na yung mga naninira kay Marcos. Ako na yung lalabas. So lahat ng mga sinasabi before kay Marcos, ang sasabihin lang ay hindi kasi dilawan yan, or hindi yan, or ay yung church yan, ganito yan. So yun ang Duterte help pave the way for a Marcos revival. Ganun yung nangyari. So yung alliance nila has been very helpful para sa isa't isa talaga. Pero of course, yun nga.
So symbiotic, no? I get what you're saying kasi mukhang there has been a fundamental change in our political consciousness, no, which is affecting our politics. Kumbaga yung narrative, yung meta-narrative, yung kwento ng ating bayan ay parang bumaliktad, no? So up until siguro 2014-15, ang kwento was, although you could say this is a fact, was mabablame mo yung mga Marcoses for everything that went wrong in the Philippines and yung mga sumunod na mga trapos, no, since 1986, kasi marami pa rin trapos. So ang Aquinos are like the saviors, no? Silang hindi corrupt, silang daan matuwid, mga ganun. But 2016 election, especially nanalo, no, si Duterte, at almost nanalo si Bongbong. Almost completely nag-revolve to, no? So nagkaroon ng revolution in terms of consciousness, no? You may agree or disagree with it, or you may call it restoration. But ngayon bigla, everything that has gone wrong in the country, kasalanan ng mga Aquinos, yan ang narrative nila ngayon, di ba? Na parang whatever goes wrong, Mindanao, China, South China Sea, America, puro Aquinos. Although of course you have to point out between Cory and and Pinoy, I mean there was Ramos, there was Erap, there was Arroyo for 10 years, no. But mukhang that doesn't matter considering the fact that President Duterte is close friends with President Arroyo. I know for a fact, I interviewed her the other year. President Ramos used to be a good friend. I also talked to him about that. He's a fellow Ilocano. And Erap seemed to be in a kind of okay terms. And well, populist din siya like President Duterte, no? So yun lang yung parang, Mark, I would just say for some people, that's strange na parang, it seems, I like this Russian term, no? Even the past is unpredictable. Parang every administration biglang iba yung kasaysayan, no? Iba yung version ng reality ng kasaysayan, and that shapes how we move forward. But Mark, you said something also very interesting. Dun sa quote-unquote 16 million na DDS or nagsuporta kay Pangulong. Although I don't agree with that. I know it's not monolithic, it's very complicated. But let's just say the so-called 16 million, no? Sa tingin mo, marami sa kanila dyan, Bongbong, no? So if Bongbong got 14 million votes, siguro out of 16 million Duterte, majority dyan, pro-Marcos rin talaga na hardcore, no?
Yeah, and aside from of course yung ginawa ni President Duterte, I also blame the other side din for doing a poor job of fighting back. For the last 5 years, lahat ng mga ginagawa ng mga Marcoses, and hindi din makasagot yung kabila. And of course, mahabang usapan yan. So
yes,
siguro
we're gonna have a next
that
episode exactly on that. Yeah, on
so
Liberal Party and Lineal. Don't worry, sige, we'll go there. For now lang, gusto ko lang pick your mind doon sa issue ng so doon sa mga Duterte supporters, a lot of them are number one Marcos, and then Duterte is there like second love or something like that. Ganun ba yun?
They love Duterte kasi nakabalik yung mga Marcos, and yung nga Marcos revival nga na masasabi natin. Right. So of course, love din nila, and of course that's their home team. DDS sila, proud sila na DDS. Yeah. So for the last 5 years, they've been fighting and lahat ng and on many fronts they have been succeeding, di ba? In 2019 na elections, di ba? Nakita naman 'yan. So yun yung nangyayari between the Marcoses and the Dutertes. And at the same time also yung mga comparison sa kanila, yung mga parehas like yung sa infrastructure, yung build na yan. So in fairness to the former President Ferdinand Marcos, madami din naman talagang napagawa during that time. Siyempre yung iba would argue yung sa utang for that. Pero hanggang ngayon kita mo pa rin yung mga infrastructure, and I guess
yung legacy, no? Yung long-term legacy, and I think the president kind of realized that. I mean, just for transparency, I was one of the speakers at the Dutertenomics Forum nung 2017, no? So isa ako sa mga invitado ng folks in Malacanang and all. Well, these were those days. So I am very aware, na may inspiration sila nakuha. And I think it's a perfect thing. I mean, infrastructure creates jobs. It can last for generations. Yun ang pinaka-best na pwede mo ma-leave behind. But before I go, before I go a little bit controversial doon sa aking comparisons, compared to other leaders nung Cold War era, second half of the century. Ikaw, Mark, ano impression mo sa Marcos era, or what are the things that you predominantly hear about them? Ano yung mga usual characteristics or descriptions na narinig mo about the Marcoses? And ikaw, I mean personally, again, we're not endorsing anyone, we're just talking about impressions, no? Yung dominant narratives around us. Bakit ang sikat ng mga Marcoses? Like what is it? What is it that drives it? Magaling ba talaga si Marcos?
I try to keep an open mind. I try to analyze din kung ano ba yung nafi-feed sa akin na information growing up, and kung ano ba yung, so I try to balance everything out. So of course, growing up, lahat ng napapanood ko, people power and all that, and yung mga abuses during the martial law era. And so ayun, I always keep that in mind, but at the same time titingnan ko din yung yung mga nagawa ngang magagandang projects and yung mga sinasabi ng mga matatanda na during that time walang krimen o walang ganon. So merong mga sinasabing ganon ng mga
May disiplina. May
disiplina
disiplina. Yeah,
ng mga
exactly. That's the
matatanda.
term.
Pero syempre ang sa akin ang isang major factor din na personally medyo ano ko is yung pagdating sa democracy kasi sobrang important sa akin yun. Ayoko din naman
Yeah.
kumampi dun sa someone na who would try to stifle or take
Right,
away
basic.
yung democracy ng tao. So
Right.
that has always been
As a YouTuber also, no? I mean, you need the freedom to express yourself and all. Di ba?
yun,
I mean,
syempre I'm a YouTuber
imagine kung
din.
di tayo democracy ngayon, tapos yung sinusupport mo ay hindi gusto ng administration, then you're gonna be in trouble, right? You're gonna be shut down. Exactly.
True.
Let's just be honest about that. Yeah.
Ayun. So freedom of speech is important for me as a YouTuber. So yun yung mga factors na when I try to balance things. And of course, yung sa corruption, of course, malaking issue din yan. And syempre, I wasn't born yet at that time. Pero syempre ngayon, medyo aware din naman tayo sa mga kung ano yung mga hanggang ngayon pag-aari ng kung sinong pag-aari. So, huwag na tayo magsalita. Pero so medyo may aware tayo sa ganon, di ba? So, pero yun nga, syempre kung babalansehin mo din, sinasabi din naman nga nung iba, syempre BBM is a different person naman. Is a different
minefield yata to, Mark. Medyo navigate tayo dito.
Importante that we
Parang naging pink ka rin. Yeah, I know.
Importante that we talk about all sides and marinig. Yes. I try to check my biases then growing up
Yeah.
I try to,
of course. Of course, Mark, in the future, hopefully we'll invite more people as our guests, including pro Duterte, pro Marcos, all of them. No? So please, to our subscribers, continue to support us. Mga ano lang to. We're just getting the ball rolling. No? So we're gonna have more interesting conversations also in the future. But for now, ito yung mga takes namin no? Dito sa issue ng mga Marcoses. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. It was not until college that I got to know more about the martial law. I think pag tignan mo yung high school curriculum natin, I don't think it's because nag-aaral din lang ako sa Baguio. I think it's really because I think yung ating basic education really, some would even say nag-whitewash no, ng ating kasaysayan. No? I mean, you might read more about panon ng mga Espanyol than panon ni Marcos no? and martial law and the real impact of that. And then, of course, nung nasa diliman na ako, well, hindi ako activist or anything like that, though some of my professors were former activists, no, at some of them were tortured, Mark, no. So I got to know some very, very horrific stories. At ang mga nakausap ko lalaki so far. So kung mga babae, I mean, you could imagine probably even worse happened to them, no. So I mean, I really suggest folks, no, before getting overexcited about the past, bother to also look at the story of the survivors, no, of human rights violations and all. Hindi ito mga dilawan, by the way, mga anti-dilawan din yung mga ibang kilala ko, lalo sa UP, ayaw din sa mga liberal yung mga yan, no. So I mean, that was a little bit of an eye-opener for me, no? And I began to research. Now, in my case, medyo controversial na tayo, no, Mark. Ako kasi talaga my specialization in college was international affairs, no. So comparison and economic development, yun yung mga comparison ko. So one thing I really wanted to understand, let's please get the facts right here. Ang Pilipinas po ay second richest in East Asia after Japan, not in the 70s, but ito yung mga immediate decade after the World War II. So up until early 1960s po ang Pilipinas. You can fact check all of that, no problem. I've done all this stuff. We can put even the link there later on. And up until early 1960s, Philippines was actually the lead country, the pole country dito sa Southeast Asia. Again, we're just talking about facts. No? Kaya nga, Mark, napansin mo yung Asian Development Bank ay nilagay sa Pilipinas. Not in the 1970s. Again, the decision for that was made in the early 1960s and na-established siya by the mid-1960s. Bakit kamo? Because during that time, the fastest growing economies in the world is sa dyan Pilipinas. And then South Korea was also rising, and then Iran in West Asia. So the three options I from what I know were Seoul, Tehran, and Manila. And eventually they settled on Manila, considering especially the fact na yung Asian Development Bank is Japan dominated at yung Japan po ay major investor sa Pilipinas, and yung former king ng Japan ay actually bumisita sa Pilipinas noong 1960s. But back then I think prince pa lang siya, no, crown prince siya. So noong until 1960s talagang Philippines was in a good position. Now, We can have a lot of explanation about that. Again, let's go to facts. According to Singaporean former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, one reason na napaka-ahead ang Pilipinas is because of the legacy of the Americans. No, maganda daw yung infrastructure na binigay sa atin, yung education system. UP used to be American University. So yun ang argument niya. Although of course, my counter argument would be, dinurog ang Pilipinas ng mga Amerikano nung Battle of Manila. So if you read the book of Rampage, no, kawawa talaga tayo. Alam mo pare, yung mga Amerikano, para hindi mamamatay yung mga sundalo nila, pinumba-bomba nila yung Manila para mamatay yung mga Japanese. In the process, bro, leveled yung Manila. Manila was one of the 3 most devastated cities, I think, next to Warsaw and Berlin. And then, of course, yung extreme cases is Nagasaki, Hiroshima. But you know, Manila was the pearl of Asia. You know, I mean, basahin mo yung panahon pa ng mga Espanyol. Actually, yan mga Espanyol, may mga good legacy sila sa atin despite all the negative thing we hear. By the early 20th century, the Philippines had the highest literacy rate in Southeast Asia at least, and one of the highest in Asia, no? Kaya yung first nationalist revolution ay nangyari sa atin. Well, you know, yung Rizal natin ay inspirasyon sa mga Indonesians, Malaysians around the world. Pupunta ka sa Malaysia, Indonesia, may mga pangalan ng Rizal, no? Rizal Sukma, Rizal, some of my friends are very prominent people in ASEAN, no? So, some would say baka it's the legacy, but regardless of what debate we're gonna make, is that until 50s and early 60s we're doing well, no? So let's get the facts on that right. And then this is where things get interesting. Kasi Mark, ako ganito for a moment, let's just put aside politics. Pag tignan lang natin economics, no? So politics, sabihin natin, we can debate forever, although there was human rights violation. Martial law nga, wala nga democracy. I mean, go to China, maybe you'll get a taste of what authoritarianism is. But even though they're not also martial law. Martial law, military talaga in charge. So kung may mali kang gagawin, walang lagot ka, walang korte, walang due process, media is closed down. So, you know, you want authoritarianism, go ahead. I can give you an address, no? But anyways, let's just go to economics because I believe this is more interesting in a sense that at least we can talk about data, no? Pag titignan mo yung 1960s, South Korea yung almost katapat natin up until the 1960s, no? Although South Korea, of course, bugbog sila dun sa war, 1950 to 1953, yung Korean War. But they were recovering very fast, no? So South Korea, Philippines, more or less the same level. Similar population, although smaller than Korea to a certain degree, both of us friendly with the US. But tignan mo naman, what is also more interesting is that nung 60s and 70s, in South Korea, they also had someone like Marcos, Park Chung-hee, no, yung kanilang former dictator general, and Park Chung-hee's daughter, Park Geun-hye, was the former president of Korea na na-impeach, no, a few years ago. I think this 2016. No, dumaan nga ako sa Korea, may protest na all. I think this is just a few days after Trump won, biglang protest sa Korea. Ang gulo ng 2016. That was crazy year. So almost kapanahon yung dalawa, and I came across some stories and anecdotes na Koreans would send people sa Manila to study mga highway system na binibuild before Marcos and during Marcos and beyond. No? So in fairness, the Philippines infrastructure was our airport, Philippine Airlines, yung fashion natin, barang Tagalog. Tayo, kumbaga, we were like the Singapore. Yung, kung anong Singapore ngayon sa atin, tayo yung sa Southeast Asia. But again, this is not 1970s, 1950s, 60s pa lang, tayong fashion trendsetter hub sa region. But anyways, let's go back to that. So Korea and Filipinas, more or less, same level. Medyo behind pa nga Korea ng konti, mas poor pa sa atin ng konti. You know, few $100 per capita. Parasing leaders, more or less. Two very strong man, two very visionary, Park Chung-hee, Marcos. Pero tignan mo naman Marcos. Tignan mo naman yung Mark, no, yung legacy. Eventually, of course, na-assassinate si Park Chung-hee. He was replaced by some generals. And then 1980s, nagkaroon din sila ng people power almost right after us, no? So yung transition natin to democracy also happened within similar time. So you could see how interesting parallel is. Parang lost twins tayo, no? So Koreans used to be also poorer even than us long time ago. So not long time ago actually, 67 years ago. So yung mga nagsabi Koreans are ganito dahil nationalistic sila. Well, at some point mas mayaman pa rin tayo sa Korea. Yeah. So that cannot explain it. There must be something that happened in those crucial years from 60s to 80s, no? Yung foundational developmental years. So anyways, I'm simplifying this, Mark, no? I mean, there's a lot that we can discuss about this. Pero tignan mo, by the time na tapos na si Park Chung-hee at tapos na yung dictatorship and authoritarianism sa Korea, yung chaebols nila, ito yung mga conglomerates nila, ito yung mga oligarchs nila, Hyundai, right? Samsung, LG, pare nagiging world-class manufacturing powerhouses sila. And one reason they were able to do that is not because genius ang Koreans at hindi Pilipinas. We were all more or less the same in the 60s, right? In terms of level of development. Mas ahead pa nga tayo ng konti sa kanila. It's because ang ginawa ni Park Chung-hee is dinisiplina niya yung mga elite, including yung mga owners ng Samsung, LG, and there's one very interesting story in the book, How Asia Works. I really suggest you to read that. Very interesting book yan. Written by a journalist who has a PhD in economics from Cambridge. Kasi yung mga may-ari ng LG, Samsung, medyo similar sa mga may-ari ng mga conglomerates natin dito. Gusto nila real estate, land, kasi madali kumita dyan. Land grabber, alam mo naman, di ba? You know,
same din halos.
It's easy to make money like that. Mga oligarchs talaga. Sinabi ni Park Chung-hee sa LG, I'll give you 5 years, you have to build me nice television and all. Sabi ng LG, yung chaebol boss nila doon, ay wala kaming alam dyan sa electronic and all. Sabi niya, di ka makikinig sa akin. Mawawala lahat ng mga meron kayo. Within a year, meron na silang partner na German electric company. And within decade, LG became, a global company. At ang ginawa ni Park Chung-hee was, pag pasaway kayo, pag kinuha niyo yung pera ng estado, kasi taxpayers money yan eh. Kawawa yung mga Koreans eh. Talagang, one reason Koreans bought Korean products because napakamahal yung foreign products, ang taas ng tariff. So no choice yung Koreans. They have to buy trashy. Alam mo yung mga Kia cars dati, ang papangit ng mga Korean. Actually, that's the start of rise. Before Kia, ang papangit ng mga Korean car. Harap Volvo, tabi BMW sa likod. But you know what Park Chung-hee did was parang he made car imports very expensive para mapilitan ng tao to make cars. But he had standards. So sinabi niya dito sa chaebols, pag hindi gumanda ng standard ng kotse niya within the next 5 to 10 years, kukunin ko yung company, bigay ko dun sa ibang kumpare ko. So dahil dyan, na-pressure lahat ng Samsung, LG, So Korea went from a backward agricultural country into biggest shipbuilder, into one of the biggest car makers. Even though these companies dati, mga katulad lang, mga land grabber lang, mall lang ginagawa, mga real estate. But because of pressure and support, and sinusupervise talaga sila, look at where Korea reached. Now, Marcos had a similar chance. So he got rid of the old oligarchs, no? Sinara niya yung isang malaking media company na nangyari naman ngayon. So, pag sabi niya, walang kwenta kayo. I mean, mahina kayo. Like, we had all the advantages, pero ang Pilipinas is losing steam. So, Marcos had a vision. I'll give that to him. He had a vision. And kinausap ko si Sionel Jose, yung ating writer who interviewed Marcos back then, palang 60s and all. So I had some stories with people who really met Marcos and very impressed by him, no, without being biased and all. So what Marcos did, he got rid of the old elite, but this was the problem, Mark, no. Ang ginawa niya, he relied on his own cronies, no. Alam natin sino mga yan, di ba? Including some who are related to the Aquinos, right? And then of course, all those barons and cronies. Ito yung naging problema, Mark. Walang reciprocal, walang standard na kumbaga. So anong nangyari kay Marcos is parang bigay ng support sa cronies even though purong palpak yung mga companies ng mga cronies.
So walang, let me get this straight. Sorry, I'll cut you in. So walang naging focus sa industrialization na nangyari during, yun ang biggest difference between Korea.
So there was an effort towards industrialization. In fact, export-oriented industrialization panahon ni Marcos. But there were a number of problems. One was, mas matalino yung mga Koreans kasi realize nila, pag low developing country ka pa lang, huwag mong buksan yung economy mo kasi hindi ka pa handa mag-compete. It's like, hindi ka pa nga nag-gym, punta ka sa MMA, mag-boxing ka. So, sara mo muna, isolate sarili mo, strengthen inside, then open up. So, ang tawag dyan, import substitution, industrialization. So, Koreans first build up internally, put up barriers, force companies to give them technology, then they open up by the time na ready na sila. In the Philippines, a lot of our technocrats, panahon ni Marcos, I mean, Cesar Virata and all can tell us about it. They were good people. They had good CCCAT, mga ganun. They had good intentions. But I think they wanted to open up the economy when, medyo hindi pa ready. At the terms of trade, international trade was not good. But I think the even bigger problem was, nung nagbibigay ng support si Marcos sa mga cronies niya, of course, every president has to have supporters. Hindi naman pwede ikaw lang mag-isa sa palace. So you have to have your elite support. Hindi siya nag-impose ng strict standards, performance-based standards. So in a way, parang nangyari eventually is the tail was wagging the dog. The cronies at some point perhaps were controlling the country more. So if titingnan mo yung maraming utang nangyari at mga palpak na projects, a lot of them had to do not necessarily with Marcos himself and his family, but also the cronies. Now, there could be many theories on that. Again, so see, I'm trying to be really fair here, no? So one theory is the Koreans had a stronger state institution legacy from the times of Confucian era, yung mga kingdoms na meron tayo. Habang sa Pilipinas, mas mahina yung estado. So yung ability ni Marcos to control the cronies was much smaller than ability of Park Chung-hee. That's one argument. The other argument is that nagkasakit si Marcos, no? So that's the problem with authoritarianism and dictatorship. Kahit best leader siya, pag nagkasakit siya, you don't know who's in control. At alam natin, later on, ang nangyari, nag-aaway-aaway yung mga Campo-Campo, Enrile versus Imelda. So Marcos was not able to supervise the situation. Micromanage eh. Kailan mo micromanage in the way Park Chung-hee was able to do. And just to give an example, Mark, in Singapore, ganito ang micromanaging ni Lee Kuan Yew. Street by street, titignan niya saan yung may trees, saan yung anong kulay ng boulevard. He was really like a mayor, no? Si Lee Kuan Yew. I mean, Singapore is a city after all, city state. So Marcos, in a way, yun din ang isang disadvantage niya, no? So again, I'm very simplifying this issue, but I would say one of my biggest disappointment is that meron kang 21 years in power, no? Quite similar with other leaders like Mahathir, Lee Kuan Yew, well, a little bit more, Park Chung-hee, among others. Pero tignan mo naman yung legacy nila, no? Legacy nila is Samsung, Hyundai, punta ka sa Taiwan, so meron silang dictatorship under the Kuomintang party until sila rin in the 80s nag-people power. Tignan mo naman yung Taiwan, no? One of the biggest semiconductor producer, or even tignan mo yung Malaysia, yung 20 years authoritarian rule ni Mahathir before, meron silang Proton. Ano meron tayo sa Pilipinas? You see, this is a very legitimate question, Mark, because when you're given 21 years in power, well, not given, you took it at some point also, like martial law ka. Sana naman, I would have expected may meron tayong sariling national car, national steel, national compass, and now, some would say, well, kasalanan din Cory at saka Ramos yan na they privatize a lot of our industries, which is true. But let's not forget, we inherited $26 billion in debt, no? At marami debt na yan ay odious debt. So, I mean, let's be honest, Mark, anyone can build a lot of roads kung pwede mo lang iutang yan tapos ipasa mo yan sa next generation.
And
I mean,
most of the
honest,
na-privatized na companies, if those are old enough to remember, napaka-inefficient. Diba? Yung
yes,
mga...
exactly. I mean, they were inefficient. Ang dami natin power cuts pa noon ni Ramos for the older one, you can remember. No?
PLDT nung araw, di ba?
Sobrang palpak, di ba? So what we had to do is to open up. Now, of course, we can criticize how it was privatized. I'm willing to criticize that. I'm willing also to criticize the fact that, in fact, my former professor, sa economics, no, one of the things that we discussed, my fellow Inquirer columnist, my God, si Tita Winnie, Winnie Hunsod, my God, si Tita Winnie, my former professor in economics, I mean, she pushed for the Korea administration to renege on some of the debt kasi questionable yung mga debt, hindi pumunta sa Pilipinas, pumunta dun sa mga kurakot na mga oligarchs ni Marcos and all. But hindi nag-negotiate ng hard. So, we can debate about that na but I think what we cannot debate are certain facts, which is one of them, you are 20 years in power, not 6 years, not 4 years, not 2 years, not 8 years, 21 years in power. Ano ang naging legacy mo aside from, of course, sana naman nag-build ka ng konting infrastructure, no? And yes, I agree. President Marcos got a lot of things right. Yung irrigation natin, a lot of our irrigation system is Marcos era. We're just maintaining that and natin. Yung ginawa natin sa West Philippines, yung airstrip natin sa Pag-asa, ay napakagandang ginawa ni Marcos dyan. So, let's give credit where credit's due. But sana naman nag-level up tayo. Sana naman we build the foundation of a national car and everything like that. I'm not hearing any sensible defense on that part. So if you compare him with other autocrats nung kapanahon niya who also had a lot of time in power, 10, 20, 30 years, medyo nakukulangan ako dun sa achievements. I'll just be very honest about that. So I'm putting aside issues of human rights violations and freedom and all, which is a completely different important topic. But just development-wise, please lang titignan nyo. 50s and 60s, Philippines was second. 1982-83, baksak na po yung economy natin. In fact, one reason na nagkaroon ng people power, let's be honest, had to do also because baksak yung economy natin. My hunch, Mark, no, if the economy was doing well under Marcos, hindi magkakaroon ng people power. I don't think so. I think we would continue. We'll be something like, other countries who had 50, 60 years of authoritarian rule. As long as we provide
ngayon si Bongbong. He was
Yeah, I
the
mean,
crown prince eh.
or who? IME or what? So I'll just be
Or
very honest,
IME.
Marco. I think one big reason na marami lumabas in people power was not necessarily just freedom and democracy, as important as that, all due respect, but because the economy was so bad. So it's true the Ninoy Aquino assassination galvanized people. But I believe if the economy was doing well, not so many people will come out. In fact, I'll give you another example, Mark. Again, please go ahead and contradict me. Kailan nagsimula itong OFW phenomenon? Hindi ba 1970s and 80s yan? Tingnan mo, yung mga unang large numbers ng mga Pilipino pumunta sa Saudi Arabia and Middle East. Sino in charge of Philippines during that time? If the Philippines was such a paradise, bakit ka pupunta sa, alam mo naman, sa mga bansa na napakahirap ng situation?
Saudi, Japan.
Exactly. I mean, let's just be very honest about this. One reason marami tayong OFWs, one reason maraming Pilipino, mga relatives natin nasa Amerika, kailan sila pumunta? 80s, 70s. Because nga, the economy was not doing that good anymore by the late 70s. So, again, all due credit to President Marcos, we were doing well in the earlier years of 70s. Growth rates natin, I think 10% umabot. But after the oil crisis and all, tingnan mo late 70s, early 80s, ang hindi maganda yung growth rate natin. Please, look at the graphs. Tapos tignan niyo yung mga kapitbahay natin. Talaga pinag-iwanan tayo nun. Napag-iwanan tayo, sorry, nung panahon na yan. No, if you look at Singapore. Again, I have nothing against any person or something like that. In fact, my interaction with Marcos is mabait talaga sila. I mean, that's a person I have no issues with. Even President Duterte, napakabait in person. So please don't get me wrong. I'm just looking at the data and you can just Google my name. All of the stuff are there. All the citations and all are there. And I can suggest you books, no? How Asia Works. That's a really, really good book, no? Andyan yung data and all. Kino-compare bakit ang Pilipinas na pag-iwanan tayo ng Thailand, ng Singapore, ng Malaysia, and a lot of our neighbors, no? So, but I don't want to go too deep into that because this will be a whole episode just on the Marcos setup. But all I'm saying is, sana naman after 21 years, may proton car tayo like Malaysia. Sana naman, may mas mali tayong LG or Samsung, pero wala eh. So, but of course, you can criticize yung mga sumunod after Marcos, hindi rin inayos yan, which is what we're going to discuss in the next episode. Doon naman sa kakulangan ng mga liberals. And I'll tell this again. I know President Marcos had a vision. He really wanted to make us a special country. He was a great speaker. I'll give that to it. I mean, wala akong issues yan. I'm just saying, sayang, it was tragedy. A person with vision, with some capacity trying to make the most, sa dulo lang, internal politics, nagkasakit siya, tapos yung mga cronies niya, hindi ganun ka-efficient. We don't even know who killed Ninoy, to be honest. It could be one of the cronies. You know, we can go into that. So I think President Marcos was really not fully in charge na towards the end. But, you know, that's the risk you run, di ba? When you put power in one person, and then yung one person yan, wala na siya sa 100%, the whole system will suffer. Kasi kaya nga yun yung kaganda ng democracy. Kung may problema, pwede mong palitan, mayroon kang elections, di ba? And yan ang wala tayo. So the term that a political scientist Francis Fukuyama used is the bad emperor problem. So if you look at the history of China, there are a lot of periods where China grew into a major civilization and empire nung okay yung emperor nila. And then there are times ang bad ng emperor nila, they're stuck with the bad emperor for 30, 40, 50 years. And then that's where the Mongolians come, you know, the Manchus come and conquer sila. I mean, look at the history of China. There were like 300 years under Manchus, 100 years under the Mongolians. So, these are periods na nung humina sila internally. They couldn't get rid of the emperor. Kung bad yung emperor or bad yung asawa na emperor, then they're stuck with it. So this is the downside. People only look at the good side. Yes, we have had Lee Kuan Yew and all, but we have also Mugabe and Boto and all of these bad leaders, Gaddafis. Tignan mo naman kawawa yung bansa nila. So I'm not saying Marcos is at the same level as them, but the reality is that compared to other dictators or authoritarian leaders in similar periods, or let's call them strongmen, medyo kapos ako talaga sa performance natin. Sana naman by the 90s, 80s at least, we were somewhere close to Taiwan or Korea, or at least naman Malaysia. But kasi from 1980s, 90s, yung Mahathir was in charge, he laid down the foundation for national car nila. Ang ganda no, may Petronas Towers, wala talaga, Mark, no. But let me end on this point because we can go on forever. But I can see na medyo ano. But as we in Baguio, in Ilocos region, yes, we benefited. As in objectively, kung titignan mo, Mark, yung electrification numbers among others, gumanda talaga yung Marcos Highway, etc. So actually, objectively, my reason, some people, especially Luzon and Northern Luzon, to be very grateful for the Marcos years. So hindi po illusion yon, hindi myth. na Marcos years were good for some of these Filipinos in the North. So I understand bakit andyan yung continued support.
Yung idea ng solid North
fun.
is very much real.
Pero on the level of national development, again, yung war ng Mindanao, kailan yung pinaka-hit ng war ng Mindanao? Hindi ba martial law period yan? 70s, 80s yan. Punta naman kayo dyan, di ba? I mean, again, so I think these are facts that you can try to deny, but they're facts, you know, peer-reviewed facts, and the fake news, conspiracy theories, and everything like that. But let me just end on this point, Mark. Para sa akin, Marco, the reason maraming Pilipino gusto nilang Marcoses is because I think all of us psychologically, we want to know that at some point the Philippines had a golden age para may pag-asa tayo for the future. Because, di ba Mark, pag tingin mo, wala talagang tayong glory at any point in our history. Parang walang pag-asa yung bansa natin. So I believe a lot of us look at Marcos as like the oldest president we can remember and then project our best, you know, hopes onto those years to feel good. But I would say, look at 50s. 60s, Magsaysay, one of my favorite presidents. Our time was not too bad. Even panahon nila Rizal, we were among the best in Asia. I'm very proud of that. No, so I think it has to do with this psychological need for having a golden age to make the Philippines great again. I think Marcos even used that term. No, so I think that's the sense. If Marcos said to make the Philippines great again, that means our greatness was even more in the past, right? So siguro medyo kakulangan din natin yan sa consciousness natin. It stops more or less with the Marcos era because Marcos is such a big figure. But we don't know much about Magsaysay, Quirino, you know, a lot of other presidents we had, Macapagal, no? So I think sana if we have more understanding of that era or even go back to the Rizal era, probably we'll have a more balanced view. But at the end of the day, I'll just stop it there. No. Now, my biggest frustration is that you had 21 years in power. Sana naman we had something like Samsung, LG, or at least something like what Malaysians had, like a Proton or something like that. At wala tayo. So if you want to blame the Dilawans forever, go ahead. But the Dilawans, you know, like they didn't have 21 years straight in power. Let's just be clear about it. Erap was not Dilawan. Arroyo, I'm not sure you can say it's Dilawan. She's friend with President Duterte. So let's keep it there. Mark, yun. So I think
moving forward. So
now, BBM tayo. So
yun.
now, let's go to political facts, right? The political facts is that regardless of the facts about the past, we can debate about that, although you're entitled to your opinion, not facts. Bongbong Marcos, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., he is riding on a revivalism of the Marcos glory or kind of charisma and all. So Mark, ako dark horse tingin ko kay BBM. What is your fearless forecast? Do you think Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will run? Sabi niya nga, if his father was allowed to stay, maging Singapore tayo. Maybe he's saying that if he is the president, baka maging Singapore tayo kasi hindi tayo naging Singapore under Tatay Digong. Namanin natin yan. So yes, Mark, go. Let's go na to this election.
I'm hearing, narinig ko from the people on that camp and sa kabilang camp, malaki yung chance na BBM will run for president. The only one that can stop BBM, pwede siyang pigilan or harangan, in my opinion, is Sara Duterte.
From running
Like as president.
Convince.
To convince him to not run is Sara Duterte. Kasi yun lang naman yun eh. Yun lang naman. So I think ang parati kong sinasabi, maybe the Duterte should spend more time trying to parang ligawan yung mga Marcoses na for them not to run.
Don't you think they're doing that, Mark? Don't you think they're doing that? Like
the opposite.
Birthday ni Sara meeting. Huh?
The opposite is happening right now. It depends kasi kung sinong Duterte you look at. Kung si Sara, she's friendly with the Marcoses. She's very close with Aimee. Diba? Kaya nga lumalabas yung Aimee and Sara. Pero doon sa side ng tatay and doon sa kanang kamay ng tatay, medyo iba. Kaya meron ngayong nangyayari na sa amin sa YouTube na konting gulo between the Marcos loyalists and the Duterte diehards. Kasi medyo umaano na. Ang sinasabi ko nga, mga Duterte.
Tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung away nila? It's still going on now?
Naglaylo ng konti.
Naglaylo
ng konti. Pero the tension is there. And kumbaga, the first shots were fired na hindi mo akalain na magkakampi tayo. Ba't nyo kami tinitira? Na ganun. Kasi ang sinasabi ko na parang VP na lang nga ang maiaalok nyo sa mga Marcoses, parang gusto nyo pang ibigay sa iba. So yun ang Yun ang parang nagiging angulo
But
doon.
bakit mag-VP si Bongbong? Ang position nila, nanalo na sila. Why should you rerun something that you have won? I mean, BBM could say, ako, biktima ako ng, kalokohan, dapat akong VP, so naturally, I have to be president. We discussed it, right? He's gonna be 70 by the next presidential cycle. If another Duterte wins, good luck sa mga Marcoses, right? This is it. I mean, or as you suggested, very interesting, go back to Senate, be a Senate president. I don't know. I mean, ikaw.
Kaya hindi. Ito naman ang linyahan ng mga diehard Duterte. Ang iniisip nila na Sara is the stronger candidate dahil sa mga lumabas na unang mga survey, and that kung si BBM yung lumaban, mas may chance makabalik ang mga dilawan. Yun yung kanilang, they always think na ang end goal lang parate ng mga Marcoses at mga Duterte is to prevent the dilawans from coming back without considering na may sariling grupo ang mga Marcoses. Even nga sa Duterte camp, may sariling grupo si Sara, may sariling grupo yung tatay. So they're not really exactly the same.
Tapos sila mas split yung vote if both of them run. Is that the fear?
Yun ang takot, of course, ng mga supporters ng mga Duterte na mahahati. And posible talaga yun. And pero ang ito naman yung problema nga, ito yung problema ng mga Duterte that they are not doing enough to answer. Marami ang Marcos loyalists ang hindi papayag na magva-vice president lang si Bongbong. So yun ang issue nila.
So, naging VP na siya. I mean, for them, right? Naging VP na siya. Why should you run again, di ba?
So yun ang issue. And ang isang problema pa diyan, 'di ba? Tinanong mo ko kanina yung fearless forecast ko. So ito yung fearless forecast ko ng posibleng mangyari. So dalawa lang 'yan. Either Bongbong will run for president, Sara won't be her VP, definitely. Magtatapat ng dalawang yan.
Go na si Sara, go na. Nakita ko yung billboard niya sa araw
Yun. And
tapang at malasakit.
All the supporters are there. Lahat sila, GMA and all that, lahat sila nakaano na kay Sara, all in na kay Sara. Sara is running, whether the Marcoses like it or not. Diba? Ang isang option lang dyan, BBM will go after Sara, and it would be very interesting how that would look. Kung paano sila mag-aaway, or kung mag-aaway ba sila, or pagtutulungan lang nila. Pero yon, so that's one option. The other option is, if, like I said nung mga previous videos, if merong malakas na contender against Sara, let's say for example, Isko, or Pacquiao, or whoever, or Lenny, they would be forced to join forces together and magiging Sara BBM yung tandem. Pero ito yan ito yung interesting thing. May sariling galaw ang mga PDP laban under President Duterte. There's a big chance na Sara BBM, pero tatakbo pa rin na VP si Bongo.
Yun nga, I mean, I think there even reason na biglang may discussion about Bongo getting into the mix is because there's uncertainty on what Bongbong will do, no? From what we heard, I think folks in Politica among others said na Bongbong doesn't also want to run as vice president to Sara, like he has his own mind, no? So, ang ipit talaga. But wouldn't you think is also possible? Why not both of them run and corner 60% of the votes? I mean, that's not impossible.
Parehong run as president?
Yeah, and then iwanan yung 40% to the rest. Like Bongo can team up with one of them. Let's say Bongo BBM or Bongo Sara, and then Bongbong gets someone strong as VP. Then they corner 60%, keep it between them. So kung sino manalo,
it depends nga kung gaano kalakas yung kalaban. It depends how
and that
much
goes to Isko.
That
goes down.
Yun.
Yes.
So how much Isko will rise?
Let me ask you this. Please, let's try to be as honest as possible if you can. What is the status of the relationship between Isko and Marcos? I mean, I've seen pictures. I mean, the Dilawans try to send that. They send pictures of Isko, Marcos together. Last year ba yan yung meeting nila? Kailan ba yan? Yung mga nagsisira kay Isko. Nagsisira na hindi sila nag-mask, kasama sila. But it looked like a very, very cordial meeting. I mean, again, no judgment. I'm just asking. Ikaw as someone who's familiar with Manila politics and Mayor Isko, ano naman yung isang angle? Kasi network yan eh. I mean, we can talk about Marcos and Duterte, but there's the Isko aspect. What is the Isko-BBM dynamic?
I could say na kung between Marcoses and Isko, walang problema yung dalawa. I think there's no problem between the two camps. Ang nasi-strain ngayon, ang malakas na strain ngayon is between Isko and the Duterte camp kasi all the attacks coming from the Dutertes. Pero
Right.
Isko and BBM, I think wala akong nakikitang in fact ang nangyayari nga ngayon sa YouTube, kaibigan ko yung mga BBM na vloggers, 'di ba? Naano din kami kasi minsan inaatake na din sila nung mga Duterte na vloggers na iilan. So nagkakaroon ng issue na ganun. Pero I mean between Isko and the Marcoses, I think walang problema eh. I think Isko is open to working with Bongbong, with Aimee. So hindi Isko is not caught up with the Aquinos versus Marcos away eh. The war between the two eh. He's not he didn't pick wala siyang side na pinipili between the two. So he can work with the Aquinos, he can work with the Marcoses. So
I mean, obviously mukhang Marcoses will be not so, worried if an Isko becomes the president, right? I mean, it's not like Isko is gonna go after them or anything like that. Mukhang hindi naman niya priority yun, no? And in that sense, I'm sure yung mga liberal medyo hindi happy kay Isko for that, no? Very interesting. Was there a time you think na there was a thinking na BBM and Isko will team up and like Isko will be the and then Isko did so well in survey, so why not,
Ito, I can give parang exclusive dito sa atin, hindi ko to sinasabi.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what people are looking for, diba?
There are people sa kampo ni Isko na who are rooting, ang gusto nga nila is Isko BBM, yung tandem.
Right.
So merong ganong angulo sa kampo ni Isko. So hindi talaga
But BBM is VP na. But as VP na si BBM.
And of course, if you're Camp Isko, you want Isko to run for president. So ang gusto nilang VP is si BBM. So maski the people, some of the people I talk to na may ganong angulo na So Isko is hindi siya in a sense na yung parang picked aside between the Aquinos or the Marcoses, unlike marami sa mga politicians sa atin.
So lots will depend on the latest surveys na talaga third quarter. I think that will really make a deciding point talaga, no? Kasi I don't know, may sense ko baka Bongbong Mark numbers could go a little bit down. I think Isko might get the numbers up and move up, no? Baka closer to 20-25% siguro Isko. Again, I could be wrong about this, assuming the surveys are credible enough. But yun ang sense kong trajectory, no? So mukhang much will go down talaga sa third quarter survey, no? Kasi if Isko's number go a little bit higher and talagang firmly number 2, then I think Bongbong will have to make certain decisions moving forward. But then again, I won't be surprised. Baka Bongbong feels, di ba last time he was doing well in VP, then natalo siya. So baka this time he'll say, medyo mahirapan siya sa una, but he still can pull off something towards the end. You know what I'm saying? Like, leading at this point is not necessarily an indication of the final outcome of the race. Now, as long as you're just competitive, I don't think Bongbong will drop from top 4 at least or something like that. I think it'll be more or less there, no? But who knows? I mean,
parati ko naman prediction months ago, it's Isko versus Sara versus BBM. Yun yung tatlong maglalaban-laban na main contenders for the presidency na may actual chance of winning.
As of now, okay. Yeah, because we're gonna have a next episode and discuss the ones we don't discuss that much, but who used to be the most powerful figures in our politics in one way or another, whether electorally or in terms of ideology, no? Which is the Liberal Party, no? And of course, their standard bearer potentially is going to be Vice President Leni Robredo. So yun yung pag-usapan natin in the next episode, episode 4 ng Project Pilipinas. Nandiyan ka ba, Mark? Medyo mahaba yung usapan na. Sorry, nalobat na ako tuloy eh. Pasensya na with my movement. I hope I didn't overexpose myself or anything like that. So thank you so much, Mark, for this very thorough discussion. Medyo nag-deep dive tayo, no? So this is ito talaga itong format talaga. I really like this format because we can get to flesh out things. For sure, there's much more to discuss. Balikan natin si BBM in the few weeks to come, especially once we have the latest surveys, no? And I think that will be a clincher. And hopefully, once election kicks in, we can bring in either candidates or their top strategies or campaign managers, no? Na pwede natin pag-usapan dito. So please, guys, huwag kayo judgmental. This is not our final say, either on the Marcoses or BBM's chances for next elections. Not to mention, Aimee may also be eyeing the vice president as eyeing the vice presidency. Who knows, right? She's also, she's a senator. She's a
Nothing to
formidable
lose.
politician. Exactly, and she's in good terms with Sarah. Who knows? Maybe it's an all-women team, right? So, we're all talking about BBM. Yung pala si Amy out of nowhere, no? I mean, it's very possible. So yeah, so we keep it there, no? Thanks so much, Mark, no? And we look forward to your comments. Please be nice to us as you have been in the previous episodes, and we'll try to be also very nice and all in our response and all. Yeah, please continue to support and subscribe to our channels, and also hopefully as we set up the infrastructure also for Project Pilipinas. So please continue to support us, and catch you soon for our next episode on favorite topic ng some of our friends, right? The Liberal Party. May pag-asa ba? May future pa ba sila? Yan ang pag-usapan natin. Maraming salamat, guys. God bless.
Bye-bye.